Loading. Welcome to Access the Animus.
Hello everyone and welcome to a new video here on Access the Animus. Today we're going to try and get to the end of the Saint-Denis mystery of the Siege of Paris DLC of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. In the video we're going to trace back the last few steps that got fans to reach the Saint-Denis Cathedral in the real world and to obtain an interesting albeit anticlimactic message in the Isu language before moving on to the final step with a new clue recently released by the Assassin's Creed social media accounts. Thus, we're going to show you our breakdown and translation of the new Isu sentences before moving on to some interpretations about their meaning. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it, subscribing to our channel and turning the notifications on so you won't miss any of our future updates. And with that out of the way, let's have a look at the final steps of the Saint-Denis mystery of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Before we start, we'd like to catch up on some of the hints and clues that we didn't fully consider during our videos, and that were actually meant to be used while solving the parts of the riddles that we have already cleared. We're talking specifically about the hints located at the end of the encoded ancient tablets. Their actual use was found by Redditor Assassin6789, who explained that, for example, the octavus hint at the bottom of the first tablet, which means 8th in Latin, actually wanted us to get the 8th letter of the coded message, which was V, which in turn in Latin is a number meaning 5. Thus, you might remember that to decode the first message we needed a Caesar cipher using the Latin alphabet 18 letters ahead, which is the same thing as using the same cipher 5 letters back, with 5 being the number that we had previously found. As for the clue at the end of the second ancient tablet, it did say secundus post tertium tum quartus post quintum, meaning the second after the third and then the fourth after the fifth. So as he did with the first tablet, Assassin6789 looked for the second, third, fourth and fifth letters of the coded message, which are X, I, and V, and then permutated them around as asked. So the second after the third and then the fourth after the fifth, which became I, X, V, I, which in Roman numbers is 1, 10, 5, and 1. Now you may remember that the first tablet had a line that said for the next key, the first, the second, and the last one contain the next one, and then the third one remains alone. Now Assassin6789 understood that for each of the letters in the second tablet that we had found, they had to quote-unquote contain the one next to them. So starting from our permutation, I, the first one, would become I. X, the second one, would become XI. V, the third one, remains alone, and the last one, which is I again, would become IV. This would lead to a new set of numbers in Latin, 2, 11, 5, and 5. So if we did use the Caesar cipher backwards as we did in the first tablet, but of 2 characters for the first letter, of 11 characters for the second letter, and so on, we would have at last ended with the passcode YNTV, which was needed to decode the second message through the Vigenère cipher. There, it was super complicated, and online decoders are much easier to use, but what about the monks from the 3rd century that didn't have them? It looks like the devs working on this mystery thought about those details too. So now that we've fully cleared the early steps, we can go back to where we ended our last video dedicated to the Saint-Denis mystery, and we left off with the coordinates that we found that were leading directly to the Saint-Denis Cathedral. Now we did look around to see if we could do anything with the church in-game, but more and more fans started wondering if somebody had to go to the actual cathedral in the real world, and plot twist, that was actually the case. Now, before we get into that, we have to say that this didn't really sit well with us at first. We do love all the alternate reality games that feature in-lore events or riddles that have people go around the world for clues within an extended mystery, but having such activity during a pandemic such as the one that's been engulfing the world in the last 2 years was really worrisome to us, and we were pretty concerned that this could lead to groups of people flocking to the Saint-Denis Cathedral. But thankfully, it wasn't the case, at least for what we have seen online, and we have mostly seen 2 users who actually went to the Basilica and found the next step in this mystery. YouTuber Jonathan, who actually made a vlog of his search for clues within the cathedral, and user Richard Ying from the Assassin's Creed subreddit. Both of them found a QR code with an Assassin's Creed Valhalla logo placed on one of the cathedral's pillars, and some users even claim that that might have been the place where Arnaud Dorian found the Eagle of Suger's sword in the Dead King's DLC of Assassin's Creed Unity. Nonetheless, scanning the QR code led to an URL, that is assassinscreed.com/Saint-Denis Basilica, and this in turn led to this reward video. That was pretty exciting, but also a little anticlimactic, to be honest. The start of the video shows that indeed the Isu numbers had to be turned into the super precise coordinates that we found and showed you in our previous video dedicated to this mystery, while the 2 new Isu language sentences aren't actually new. In fact, they are the very same 2 sentences that we showed you in our first video on the Saint-Denis mystery as part of the secrets found in one of the edited screenshots of the Siege of Paris fan kit released a few days ago. In case you don't remember, these sentences, and thus also the ones found in the Saint-Denis Basilica, already had their translation within the same edited screenshot, which was, "You are looking for what is part of you, I for what I am. How much are you willing to sacrifice?" So that's basically where we stood, at least for a day or 2, as after going to the real Saint-Denis Cathedral, the new step that we were given was a piece that we had actually already found more than 2 weeks ago. Thus, just looking at that, it did seem like this reiterated sentence, which we had already defined as an ominous one that could hint at Odin speaking potentially to Eivor in case she needed his power and knowledge, this sentence could actually be a teaser for an upcoming piece of content, maybe the mythological expansion that might come in 2022. But apparently that wasn't the case. In fact, shortly thereafter, the Assassin's Creed social accounts posted a very similar video in terms of style and visual, but with 2 new sentences. Let's have a look at it. That's so much new Isu Script, so much compared to the anticlimactic message obtained from the Basilica that it seems like this one was the one meant to appear by scanning the QR code. In fact, this has been declared by Karen, one of the Assassin's Creed community developers, as the final piece of the puzzle. So here we are, at last, with our final challenge, the last bit of the Saint-Denis mystery. Let's start from the first sentence that we're getting, as it's the easier one, and that's because its translation is right underneath it. As usual, we start from the verb, this one, pronounced hopefully as hrudadi, which is in the 3rd person singular present tense and thus is prepares. This is a preposition we have already encountered in the readme file, which means for or to, and as we have established in the past, most of the times the prepositions are located after the word they refer to. So this word, marhak solsae, should correspond to greatness, and indeed it has the ablative ending, and thus this is family, and of course Dominic Toretto would approve. Now that we know some more vocabulary, we can finally face our last and super complex paragraph, which is actually made of 3 separate sentences. Let's start from the first one, and for once, let's look for the subject here, which is I, as we found in the sentence from the fan kit. We can then find the verb, which is this one. Now, the root for the verb is the same we found in the fankit sentences for the verb be part of or belong to, but it's in the past tense, and this character, pronounced indicates the first person singular in verbs, so this should be I was part of. We then have this word, which looks similar to the word meaning I, with a genitive dissonance, so we can guess this means of I or of me, and thus meaning my. Lastly, we have this word, hunru, which has the same root as family from the sentence we just broke down, but with this character at the end, which usually indicates an adverb. In this case, though, we think we have found some kind of rule where the word supported by this verb always has to end up with this character, and thus with a precise declension. Thus, we can roughly translate the sentence to I, my family, was part of. So I was part of my family, or I belonged to my family. The next sentence has I as the subject and then this verb, chrudoma, which is in its past tense first person singular, but also has the same root as are willing from one of the fankit sentences, but this time it is in an active form and not a passive one, so we can try and translate it as wanted rather than was willing. Then we have this word, which has the root for the adjective this, which we found in multiple files from the main game and in the collector's edition riddle, and ends with the dative case, showing a purpose or end of an action, and thus for this. Moving on, we have this word, which is very similar to the one we have already found in the fankit sentences and translated with of yourself, but actually, after seeing this new sentence, we wondered if it could be translated differently. If originally it was how much are you willing to sacrifice, this could be how much, or rather from our past translation, what or which, and this word, which doesn't appear in the English translation directly, could be of your things, making it how much of your things are you willing to sacrifice, and if that were the case, if this word actually meant things or objects, in the new sentence it would mean things as a direct object because of the accusative case. This other word has the root of the word greatness, which we found earlier and thus might be the adjective great, as it is also in the accusative case, and thus it's tied to this word. So, based on our translation attempt, this should be I wanted great things for this, as in I wanted great things for my family. And now the third sentence. The verb is the same as the one we have from the previous sentence, but with this different dissonance which indicates the present tense. So it should be I want. This word, noe, means now, as we found again in multiple files. This is again I, and this is again of me, as in my. And this word, which should be the key of everything, we were never able to find it, and so we couldn't translate it, for a time anyway. But luckily, in less than a day, associate game director Antoine Henry released a new and possibly absolutely final hint with this word. Now, this word is written in Sanskrit, and it should be pronounced as cheyete. Its meaning, as shown on the Wiktionary, is to punish, to take revenge or vengeance on, or to hate or detest. Now, why did Antoine share this word in Sanskrit? In our opinion, that's because its original version has a very similar sound and pronunciation to the word that we were looking for in our Isu language sentence. In fact, our missing word in the Isu language should be pronounced as kweyesa, while the Proto-Indo-European ancestor of our Sanskrit word is pronounced kweyeti. This shows the attention put into the puzzle, but also an element of lore, as once again it's proven that in lore, the languages in the world are descended from the Isu one, and that's why they have similar sounds and meanings sometimes. So going back to the full paragraph, it should be translated as I was part of or belonged to my family. I wanted great things for it. Now I want my revenge. So who is talking here? We don't know for now, but he's talking about belonging to a family, wanting the best for them, meaning they eventually did not get it, and of course the final mention of wanting revenge. If our translation is correct, this so easily looks like Loki. It would connect very much with the dialogues by Basim during the famous campfire scene about all he had, his family and friends who are now all dead, and the mentor Odin whom he trusted and then took all he had. Not to mention all the events from the Asgard and Jotunheim arcs that we discussed in our story analysis videos a few months back, and the revenge he wanted to take on him by surviving while his reincarnation Eivor eventually died. So if this was the case here, and if these sentences were from the Isu era, maybe they might be from the time after Odin imprisoned his son and ruined their family. Or maybe it will be the other way around, and considering this is about revenge, it might be about Vidar, the god of revenge and son of Odin, who was bound to avenge his death during Ragnarok by killing Fenrir. In any case, this looks like an even stronger pointer to the upcoming mythological expansion set to be released next year. And that's it for today's video. What do you guys think about our translation and interpretation of the final sentences? Do you agree or disagree with them? Who do you guys think is talking here? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, please write to us if you got to a different translation or a different meaning of the sentence. Who knows what we might discover. And that was possibly, maybe the end of the Saint-Denis mystery from the Siege of Paris DLC of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Thank you all again for joining us in such a difficult, complex, and at times twisted and convoluted mystery, and congrats to all the members of the community who contributed to the various findings over the last few weeks. You were all great. And kudos to the devs that have worked on this mystery as well. It was very complicated, but as usual it was very fun to work on. Once again, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.